Hi, alright. I know the last few lessons, the video lessons, weren't very good, so I was able to work out some kinks, so these are the new improved video lessons. And today we're going to work on disjunction elimination, and we're also going to work on disjunction introduction. So as you can see, we're not spending a whole lot of time trying to figure out that stupid pen issue that we were having before. So I thank you, everybody who had the patience to actually go through the last few video lessons, and I promise that I'm not going to waste your time like that again. Okay, so let's hop right to it. We're going to deal with disjunction disjunction introduction first. So let's just get a blank page here. Okay, so remember when we had a disjunction, if we had something like A or B, what we wanted, or what we said was, this disjunction is true as long as at least one of the disjuncts is true, right? So if A is true, then the whole sentence will come out true as well. And what that actually means is, if A ends up being true, so one of the disjuncts is true, if that's all you need to make the whole disjunction true, well then you could actually add on an extra disjunct as well. So we could turn this into that. And as long as we knew that A was true, then this whole disjunction would come out true as well. In other words, we don't have to worry about turning the sentence a true disjunction into a false one just by adding extra disjuncts on the end of it, right? We can continue to add more disjuncts on and make a bigger and bigger disjunction, but as long as what we initially had, as long as one of the disjuncts was true from the get-go, we're never going to worry about making that sentence false. And so this is also then called disjunction introduction, right? So that's the idea behind the truth-preserving character of disjunction introduction. So disjunction introduction just says that, let's do this in a slightly different color. Suppose I have a sentence P. Then I can actually introduce a new sentence if P or, sorry, not if P, P or Q. So I can add, I can take any sentence I want and turn it into a disjunction, and this is a truth-preserving rule in SD. And so this is actually a relatively simple rule to have, and we'll make use of it once in a while, and we'll see some examples later on. But the idea right now is just to sort of get the intuition for why we are allowed to have this rule, right? Why we're allowed to add a disjunct onto any, why we're allowed to add a disjunct to create a disjunction after we have any sentence. And the idea is, if we've already derived P somewhere, and that means that if P is true in the primary assumptions, then P would have to be true later on in the derivation. And if P is true at some point later on in the derivation, then adding an extra disjunct won't provide us any, or won't make us worry about going from any truths to a falsehood, because we knew what we already derived P. Okay, so that's for disjunction introduction. The trickier case now is going to be disjunction elimination. And so that's what we have like this, disjunction elimination. And disjunction elimination is a bit of what we call like a misnomer. So if you're familiar, what a misnomer is just a name that doesn't quite sort of characterize what it is that we're actually interested in. And I actually don't even know if this is how you spell misnomer. I've only ever said this word, so maybe we should fact check that. But in any case, we're not actually really going to be eliminating the disjunction per se. So let me try to give you a feel for this intuitively first, and before I actually introduce the official rule, to just get you into the right mindset. So remember, if we did something like, I think we called this earlier, like a proof by cases. Proof by... So the idea was something like this. Suppose somebody said, look, either John's going to be at the party or Susie's going to be at the party. And then you reason as follows. If John's at the party, then I know Paul will be. And if Susie's at the party, then I know Paul will be as well. in either case, Paul's going to be at the party. So I had something like, John, or I don't remember what I just said. Maybe it was Sarah, I guess. Either John's going to be there or Sarah's going to be there. And then I said, okay, well, if John's there, I made some inferences, and I'm going to say, well, Paul's going to be there. And if Sarah's there, well, it turns out that Paul's going to be there in that scenario as well. So whether or not this disjunct is true or this disjunct is true, I can get P, right? I can get this other sentence, namely Paul being there. Whether it doesn't matter which one of these is actually turns out to be true, or maybe both of them are true. The idea is, in either case, I can reason that Paul's going to be there. And so that suggests that as long as this disjunction is true, right? So as long as I showed that in either case I get Paul, I can then conclude that Paul's going to be at the party. And that's the intuition behind what we're going to call disjunction elimination, although, as I said before, you're not sort of eliminating a disjunction, and we're not going to be eliminating a disjunction in the same way that we were eliminating a conjunction. So let's actually go over the rule then. So I guess I should never erase that, but we'll do it like this. Okay, so the idea behind disjunction elimination is, at some point, you need to have, let's pick a different color. At some point, what you need to have is a disjunction at some point in your derivation, right? So actually, maybe I should do the line. So this is our derivation line, the main scope line. And at some point, suppose you have a disjunction like P or Q. Then the way disjunction elimination works, although we won't be eliminating a disjunction per se, is you assume in the one case, so you make your auxiliary assumption P first, and then you go ahead and you prove something, and then maybe you get, you derive R from having assumed P. And then what you do is you assume the second disjunct, right? So Q here. That's a terrible looking Q, but I think you get the idea. And similarly, when we assume Q, we can maybe also derive R as well. And then, since we proved, or we derived from P that R would be the case, and we also derived from Q that R would be the case, then we can actually just say that we derived R. So let me actually make this a little bit neater. So I'll redo this over here. Right, so we have a sentence like, oh geez. We have a sentence like P or Q. And we assume in the first case that, suppose P was the disjunct that was true, right? Because in a disjunction, you're not sure whether or not it's P, if P's the true disjunct, or if Q's the true disjunct, right? So in the case of conjunction, when you have this, you know that both conjuncts have to be true for the conjunction to be true. So if you proved, or if you derived P and Q by conjunction elimination, you can just actually remove the other side because you're guaranteed that both of them have to be true if the whole conjunction is to be true. So that's why we could just sort of eliminate one of the sides, one of the conjuncts, and just say, okay, P is actually going to be the case. In the disjunction elimination, that's not quite the right way to think about it, right? Because we're not quite sure which of these disjuncts is the one that's making sure that the whole disjunction is true. Maybe it's both, maybe it's just one, but we don't know which one. And so that's the idea behind this disjunction elimination. We're going to try to derive something by saying, look, it doesn't matter which one it is. Either case, I can derive a conclusion. So if P's the case, I show that from P, I can get R. Or I could also just as well assume Q is the case. And then I also, again, try to derive R. And if I'm able to do that, then what disjunction elimination allows me to do is to pull out R to the main scope line. And then the justification we will use is going to be disjunction elimination. And the idea here is you're going to cite this first line. So this might have been line 1. So you would cite line 1, and then suppose this was like lines 2 until 8, then you would cite 2 to 8, and maybe this was 9 to 12, and then you would cite 9 to 12. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an intuition behind disjunction elimination. And during class we can go over some examples, and maybe I'll actually make an example video of that as well, going over an example of how you would use disjunction elimination. Okay, so that's it for disjunction elimination and disjunction introduction.